The children. The Gestapo came to look for her. At that moment she wasn't there. So they took Monsieur at the Gestapo headquarters. They put him against the wall. And he said, I will count until 10. If until 10 you don't give me her name and where she is, well, I'll order them to shoot you. And he started to count. And the Gestapo officer set fire. The guns were not charged. He said a few seconds from 1 to 10. I mean, they were the longest seconds of his life.
He received notice, two children who were running away and hiding with their relatives, and the Gestapo is behind them and is going to arrest them. He went straight away on his bike to that place. He was climbing up 2 floors, was taking children out from the back window and carried them down while the police was knocking at the door in front.
There was a shelter available, not within in our building or our block. In fact, it was like 2 blocks away.
The British and Americans bombed Belgium, and some bombs fell in places where people lived. I remember there was a siren, so he made sure that all the children went down to the basement.
You could hear the fighting, the cannons and everything. We would watch how the planes, it would come in formation, fly, you were like little specks.
Monsieur was like our father, and his wife was like our mother, and they had a child, and they took care of us just like if we were their children, except they had umpteen of them. I felt that I was secure. They were nice to me. Monsieur gave me every warm feeling that we were safe and sound and accepted and wanted.
We felt this warmth coming out of him. It really was like a father to us, and full of optimism.
He was always saying such a nice things. You are a wonderful girl. You can do anything you want. You put your mind to. And this makes a difference in a child's life.
I considered a large number of the children who were there as my brothers and sisters, you know, my family, and we comforted each other. It is Monsieur who created this atmosphere.
We did everything together, and we learned together, and we had the meals together.
There was a lot of discipline, but the discipline was with love. And we felt that, you see.
It was not always easy for him, but he never looked worried, or he always looked friendly.
Monsieur had a good sense of humor, which he expressed now and then. And although there wasn't much to laugh at, but he found anyway.
I remember one night, you know, we were children, we woke up and I was hungry. And we went quietly down, we went to the fridge to pinch some, if there's something nice to eat. But we were very surprised because he was there before us, he was already, he was busy in the fridge and he saw we are coming. Then he said, okay, he was sitting with us, we were eating. He said, okay, but don't tell, we shouldn't tell anything to nobody.
And if a child had a problem or something, they would go to him and he would find time during the day to speak to that child and to help him.
We had a little backyard in this house. He would put his hand on my shoulder like this, and we would take a walk around this little backyard and talk to me and ask me questions and so forth. This was worth gold, you know? You came back satisfied and hopeful and wholesome.
These children lived Al Kiddush Hashem. That in this special home, they made brachas, they davened, they ate kosher, they declared their faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that should be our ultimate lesson. The tragedy of 1.5 million children being killed by the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, and their henchmen, it's something we will never forget. But ultimately, we need to remember to live Al Kiddush Hashem.
Everyone davened, sang songs. There was a frum atmosphere for both those who were religious and those who weren't.
Mr. Tiefenbrunner told us, if you are low, if you miss a parent, if you feel bad, just turn to Hashem and pray and you will feel His presence.
The religion was in a way the vehicle, you know, for normalcy. It gave clear guidance. You see, a lot of celebration as the Jewish religion have. He made it always the most joyful and hopeful for leading and framing life.
The Shabbosas, the Yom Tovim, the Zemiros, the mitzvahs. Monsieur and his madrichos exposed these children to an unbelievable atmosphere of happiness.
We had pool parties. They made the costume for us. It was fun.
After the davening, after the Kiddush, we ate cheesecake. And I still feel the taste of cheesecake. The atmosphere was a real Yontovdik atmosphere.
For him, this was his children. And, you know, it came Shabbos, you know, we sit on the tables, and he gave it Varteure and Shalshude. Like a Jewish family should live.
With anti-Shrita laws in effect, no kosher meat was available, which eventually manifested signs of malnutrition in many children.
There was no kosher meat, so we didn't bring in any meat. There wasn't much food, and the older ones were hungry, but we never complained. One time the doctor came. Actually, he came every 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, to check on the children. He saw that some of the children were suffering from malnutrition. You could see their bones. The doctor said that in his opinion, these children must eat meat, even non-kosher meat.
Of course, there was no kosher meat, but on the ration cards, they had the right to receive some meat. Then Monsieur made a shaila at what two rabbonim who were still in Brussels, and they asked him they should give. He's allowed to give tripa meat to the children who are weak, but he had to make a separate kitchen and, of course, separate kelim.
All those children who they decided required meat went down to the basement. And then they closed their noses because it smelled, but we were hungry.
It's August of 1944. The tide has turned. The Nazis know they are losing the war. But despite the need to transport large numbers of troops to the front, their depraved mission of annihilating the last remaining Jews in Belgium compels them to divert the trucks in the direction of the children's homes. They are going to round up the children. Monsieur was tipped off about the impending roundup by leaders of the underground movement. He swung into action to hide his children in a neighboring monastery since the priest there was sympathetic to the children.
Monsieur Tiefenbrunner קיבל ידיעה מהבריגדה הלבנה.
Mr. Tiefenbrunner received information from the White Brigade, the Belgian partisans, that they were going to take the children to Mechlin, and from Mechlin to Auschwitz.
Immediately we were given a false name, starting with the same initials. My name was Manfred Crowley.
They arranged that those people who fill up the trucks with gas for the trucks that would take us wouldn't have gas. In the meantime, Mr. Tiefenbrunner, with the main counselor, Mr. Bamberger, began to pack rucksacks and began to take us two at a time to a monastery.
The church's history during World War II is a miserable history. Very small numbers of children were saved in comparison to the total of 1.5 million that were killed, tens of thousands.
There were, however, a small number of exceptions, and the individual in the position of responsibility who actually did extend himself to save Jews did so at great personal risk. The priest in the monastery near the Tiefenbrunner children's home was one of those exceptions.
This priest agreed to take us, even though there were troubles in the wider world. The priest couldn't understand. There were some curtains over the windows, thick ones. He didn't know why there was always movement behind the curtain. Until eventually he worked out that one of the children took, when he fled from the children's home, he took a pair of tefillin, and we were standing in line to put them on, behind that curtain.
This priest was so moved by our desire to keep our Yiddishkeit that on Shabbos he gave us his office to daven Shachris.
We were there for a few days until the English and Americans arrived and liberated Brussels.
When the war ended, we all went out of the convent and we saw the American soldiers, walking by, and we cheered them.
Monsieur continued to be a father to the children after the war. His was a promise of caring with no expiration date. Monsieur was committed to raising them as devoted Jews with his entire heart and soul.
The war ended, and Yoine had complete new duties. He had to bring lots of his children, which he saved. He was saving in taking them across the border, or falsifying the papers, putting them into safe houses in order to survive the war, to be alive. But after the war, he felt his duty was to bring them back to Yiddishkeit, to be Jews. Right? And he had to go to these cloisters, to these convents, and had legal battles to get these children back to be Jewish.
The Jewish community had to intercede on our behalf because, they did not want to relinquish any Catholic kids. As far as they're concerned, they were Catholics.
Yoine Blazer Silva Zatzal, who happened to have been the Rav of my mother in Cincinnati, Ohio, traveled to Europe in the uniform of a U.S. general so as to forestall any anti-Semitic incidents against him, looking for a needle in a haystack for Jewish children. He came to an orphanage that had 1,000 children, and he approached the director of the orphanage, and he said to him, "Please give us back our Jewish children. We lost 1.5 million children." And the director, kind gentleman, said, "Rabbi, I'd love to give you back the Jewish children, but how do we know who's Jewish? I can't release good Catholic children to be raised as Jews." The Blazer Silva said, "Let me try to prove it to you." He said, "Rabbi, you've got 1 minute." They walked into the dining hall, cavernous room, and there were 1,000 children eating lunch. But how is he going to prove it? The director takes out his stopwatch, his pocket watch, and he clicks it on, and in sheer desperation, Blazer Silva screams out, "Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad." And 200 Jewish children come running to Blazer Silva, crying, "Mama, Mama, Mother, mother. The last thing they remember before they were entrusted into the orphanage or into Gentile neighbors was their mother taking their hand and putting it over their eyes and saying the Shema with them.
Very few children found an aunt or someone who returned. Most of them remained in the children's home.
And I was so disappointed that my father didn't come back, because I always felt that when he comes back, I'll be a little girl again. I will be a child.
It was the end of the war, May 1945. A man came, and I looked at him and I said, Papa, this was my uncle who wanted to left to Switzerland. He was looking a bit like my father, but he was with glasses. But you know, as I was longing to see my father, just spontaneously, you know, I called him Papa.
A lot of children came with a lot of problems. There were children who were hidden in convents. There were children who were in the woods.
We were not allowed to go to school for 2.5 years. It was forbidden for Jews. After liberation, we went back. There was a girl, Bessie Storm, and they said, well, you have to go 2 years back where you left off. That's where you're going. We said, no, we want to be where we would have been if we had attended. And finally they said, let's give it a try. Both of us were first in the class because we had very good, and you might say almost private lessons.
We went to school. We returned home at lunchtime. The problem was where to prepare for classes. There were children everywhere. Where would I do my homework? So I would close myself in the bathroom and do my homework in the bathroom.
He taught me not just to be a simple Jew, but somebody with responsibility and somebody who is good with God and with people.
As a result of his commitment, generations and generations of Jewish children are students learning in some of the most prominent yeshivos of today. It is an amazing lesson of the power of one to make a difference.
He could have taken his wife and his daughter and hidden somewhere, yet he remained in the children's home. The destiny of the children was his destiny.
Monsieur had a brother who succeeded to escape in Switzerland during the war. The consul of San Salvador, he was a Jew in Switzerland, and through him they got visas for Monsieur and Madame. They could have fled to Switzerland and from there to San Salvador, but he didn't want to leave the home because of the children. I mean, it wasn't even a question for him.
Selflessly and lovingly, Monsieur had nurtured and educated them as his own, to rebuild their shattered spirits and give them a chance at life.
If I have to pick out of my whole life one hero, he's the one, because this man is absolutely the most remarkable person with enormous courage, enormous caring, and with a mission. He knew very clearly what he wanted. And under the most excruciating times, he was able to provide, at great risk, as normal a life as you can possibly have under those circumstances.
The 2 years in the children's home created my life, I think. I had nobody educated me. I think that this period gave me education. It gave me direction. I can also say that because of this, I remained from.
Parents we didn't have. So he gave us the feeling that I deserved to be loved and to be cared for.
It's very hard for children today to picture a home where so many children who went through traumatic experiences all come together. It was really a miracle.
Monsieur's nefesh, to be kind one to each other. That when you see somebody who is in trouble, but really to help him. This is the thing, what I think mostly we have got to learn from him.
I think everybody who knew him had the same impression that he was close to him.
My mother, she had to share her husband with a lot of kids. And that was hard. I think that's Mesirut Nefesh also.
I'm speaking to young people. You should see the applauding, how they are touched. But it's Mr. Tiefenbrunner. I'm the person that I am today because of Mr. Tiefenbrunner.
How he manages is I still don't understand that, you know. It's, but he did, and I'm forever grateful. Yeah, so is my wife.
We never left the contact. We always had person contact, and till he passed away.
Through mature eyes, a newfound sense of wonder and recognition of the man they'd simply called Monsieur emerges.
No.